So the demo of the NetExperience Wi-Fi Management Platform, Cloud Platform Chapter 1, will be the intro to the portal hierarchy, focusing on the service provider portal and drilling down to customer dashboards. We'll show the inventory and we'll drill down to an access point. All right, so this is the service provider portal. So the NetExperience Cloud Management Platform has multiple levels of portal logins. At the very top of the hierarchy is the platform admin portal. And this is the interface by which the NetExperience DevOps team and the support teams have access to the platform to make sure that we're able to support our customers and that we're able to make sure the service is up and running. One level down from that is the service provider portal, and this is what's being shown on the screen now. Typically, our service provider customers will log into the portal at this level, and from here you are able to create multiple customers. And each customer then is a collection of access points, clients, configurations, profiles. So within the service provider level, we're able to do a number of things. One is creating customers and managing different customers. We have here a summary of how many customers, how many client devices, how many access points, how many switches are provisioned under management and in service. From here, we're able to also manage the service provider admin and users, so you can create additional logins for anybody who needs access at this level. We're also able to create logins at the customer level and further down in the hierarchy as well. But at the service provider level, this is where we're able to manage logins. There's a number of other options here as well. For example, we're able to search across all of our customers for a particular access point or a switch that is provisioned. We can filter by model, we can filter by profile, we can sort by alarms, by name, by MAC address, or even by management IP. So this makes it very easy to locate any piece of equipment that is under management, regardless of which customer portal it resides under. We have the same option for switches as well. Another feature that we have at the service provider level is the ability to move between customers. So for example, if a device is assigned under one customer, we're able to move it over to another customer under the same service provider, or we can move it to a different location within the same customer under the same service provider. So we can do this in bulk. Another feature that we're able to support from the service provider level is the use of profile templates. And this is used for simplicity and manageability of multiple customers and profiles. So the idea is that we're able to define a profile or a set of profile templates at the service provider level, and we're able to copy them into a customer level that can then be used to assign to access points or switches. So this way you're starting with a base template with some preset standard configs, and then customize on a per customer or per site basis for those few things that you would want to change per site. This helps with synchronization and standardization of configurations. And one more thing I want to cover on the service provider portal as well is the ability to manage firmware baselines. So periodically, the NetExperience team will provide updates to access point firmware and also make switch firmware available for upgrades. And from the service provider level, we're able to define a set of firmware versions that we call baseline for the type of models that you want to deploy. So, for example, if I wanted to deploy these two models, and each with a specific firmware version, we can define that as a baseline. And once the baseline is defined, we can then create an upgrade plan for a specific date to be active. And what it will do is when the activation date hits, all customers that are running these particular models that match these particular models will be upgraded to the software versions defined in the baseline. And so this is a way to be able to do scheduled upgrades when you upgrade an entire network. When a new firmware version is available, you can schedule these upgrades to happen overnight unattended, and it'll create the network as defined in the plan. This is also available at the customer and location levels as well, which we'll get into a little bit later. So the next thing we'll get into is going down into the customer level portal. So one level down from the service provider is the customer level portal. And from here, you're able to look at the dashboard, which is the last 24 hours of this particular customer. What's happened? How many clients are connected? How many access points? How many switches are available and in service? You can go down and look at the mix of client vendors that you have in the network, the list of equipment vendors you have in the network, as well as the active alarms that may need attention from the network operations team. One level down from this is the inventory view. And from here, what we're able to see is on the left-hand side, a list of locations and their hierarchies. So the way that the locations work is that they are a type of folder structure, and they're fully customizable, And you can take a location and extend that location tree based on how you deploy a particular customer. So a customer can represent a single site with multiple levels, buildings, or it can be a group of sites that are related, for example, a property management group or hotel chain that will share configuration profiles. It's also used as a location filter, so you can click on the location and the results will be filtered by that location. On the right-hand side, we have a list of access points in the location that I've selected. If I click the button again, it deselects the filter. And now we have every single access point provision in this customer. We can filter by the connection status, so we are only looking at APs that are connected to the cloud. And if we scroll to the right, we can see a number of high-level statistics about what the access point is doing, what profile it's using, what location, what's the uptime, how many clients are connected, what channels they're operating on, etc. If we click on one of these access points, we can then drill down into the specific access point details. So this is the access point details page, and you can see some identity information, profile information, firmware version, some health stats, and client stats. There's also a topology view, which is a view of how the various devices under management are connected inside the customer network. And this is dynamically generated by the metrics that we are getting from the devices themselves. If we expand the client widget, you can see the list of clients currently connected to this access point. And if we click on one of these clients, the drill down takes us into the client view, which is again a page specific for the particular client that we clicked on. So now we've gone from the service provider portal down to a specific customer, then within that customer a location, and then an access point, and then a specific client device. So this facilitates troubleshooting. And we're able to drill down from a very high level of the network view down to a very granular view of a particular client connection itself. I think we'll stop here for Chapter 1. So moving on to Chapter 2, we'll cover locations and location hierarchy and configuration profiles for the access points. The locations themselves, as I mentioned earlier, are fully configurable. So the way that we can configure them is through this Configure Locations tab in the portal. And from here, you can add a new location, and it's going to ask you where do you want this location to be located in the tree. So it's going to ask you for the parent location. So if I wanted to create a new location under, let's say, UK new location, new sublocation, we can do this. We'll type in the country code, some optional fields, lat long of a particular site, if there's an address, whether it's a multi-dwelling unit, which I'll cover a little bit later. Do you want to use an auto profile, which is a mechanism for enforcing a specific configuration profile for that location? And what that means is, if I turn this on, it's going to ask me for an access point profile, which is basically the full set of configuration profiles that will be pushed to an access point. What this does is that every access point in this location will get this profile as soon as it's added to this location. Now we can also override that by using a model override. And so let's say, for example, if I want all the EAP 101s in this location to have a different profile because they're covering common areas or the garage or something, we can override that particular profile assignment based on the model ID. And so this is a way of making it easy to install. Once you set everything up, once you set all your locations, your profiles, all the installers or the commissioning folks need to do is onboard the AP and drop into the location. Everything else is taken care of automatically. So if we save this location, you can see that under UK new location, now we have a new sublocation with this little purple icon that indicates that there's an auto profile set for this location. There's no access points in there yet, but as soon as an access point is dropped in, either it's going to be of this model, and it's going to get this particular profile, or it's not going to match this. And we're going to use the default profile for this location for that access point. So coming back to the configuration piece of this, the way that we do configuration is profile-based. So every access point or every switch is assigned an access point or a search profile. Now the access point for profiles is a little bit more complex than the switch, just by virtue of the software stack being more complicated and it's more things to configure. So the access point profile is a container of options that you can turn on and off on some settings. For example, do I want to turn off the LEDs because this access point is going into a hotel and people don't like blinking lights in the bedrooms? Or do I want to disable SSH access because, security concerns? If I want to turn on this syslog, if I want to tag the management VLAN on the AP, some settings, but also it contains a number of child profiles. So, for example, every access point profile needs an RF profile. And the RF profile is a container of all of the radio level settings that can be configured. So things like, do I want to use auto channel? Do I want to use auto channel but exclude certain channels or bands? For example, I don't want to have DFS, then I can exclude them from my auto channel planning. Maybe I do want DFS, but I know this particular channel is really bad at this location, and I can exclude that. Those are all fully configurable. As well, if you really want, you can also disable the auto channel and set individual channels at the AP level itself. So we can go full static channel as well. And all of these things are configured in the RF profile. Things like, do I want to turn on auto cell size, which is our transmit control power adjustments? Those can be enabled by default, but they can be disabled, and then power levels can be statically set as well. Things like, do I want to turn on client steering? Do I want to turn on band steering? All of those are configured in the RF profile. But once you define this, they can be attached to any number of AP profiles, so they can be reused as a building block of the final config. Similarly, with SSIDs and an SSID itself as a profile, we can, let's say, pick this as an SSID profile and within an SSID profile. But because this is pre-built, there's a number of options inside the SSID profile itself as well. Things like what encryption or security mode does the SSID need to run. So we support everything from open to web, and all the way down to WPA, WPA2, WPA3, both personal enterprise as well as various types of multi-PSK, which we'll go into detail a little bit later as well. So pretty much every security mode that is standard is supported. Depending on the security mode, the menu changes, depending on whether a radius server is required. And if it is, it's going to ask for a radius profile, which is again a profile which contains the list of radius servers that we will do authentication against. If we pick, for example, WPA3 personal, it's going to ask for a security key. If we pick, let's say, Open or OWE, then there are really no other security options that need to be picked. So this is context aware and depends on the mode that is picked. Also, we have other options like rate limiting. If we want to hide the SSID, want to filter IPv6 traffic, which radio bands we want to configure this on, we can configure on 6 gig as well. Do we want to tag the traffic on a specific VLAN? We can modify that here as well. Let's say we want all the traffic from this SSID to go to VLAN 100. That's what we set it. If this is the guest network, we typically will use client isolation. And if, let's say, there's some common web page that we want the isolated clients to be able to reach, we can whitelist that particular resource. For example, 192.168.10.5. We can do that as well and let the wireless clients access that IP address. If we want to use a captive portal, which is a splash page, we can enable it here. And again, it's another profile that we can pick, and a few other profiles here as well, though that we can go into more detail in a subsequent video. There are the things that we support that we didn't cover. Things like Passpoint, we fully support Passpoint, and also open roaming. As part of that also there is a configuration part for RADSEC proxy, which if you're using open roaming, then we will be able to do RADSEC with dynamic discovery, and it's all configurable from here. There's additional options like LLDP controls and tunneling protocols that we also support. All of those are configurable from the AP profile, so we were able to do L2GRE tunneling or VXLAN tunneling based on VLAN ID.